field for Barcelona after his injury layoff. First time since September. Did not score, but obviously Barcelona didn't necessarily need him at that point. Claudio Bravo starring in net for Barcelona, keeping Real Madrid off the board. And with Rafa Benitez under pressure, Zinedine Zidane says he is not going to be replacing Rafa Benitez, or he has played down speculation that he could replace Rafa Benitez as the manager of Real Madrid. And of course, you lose to your biggest rivals for nothing. You fall behind in the league by 6 points in Spain, even at this point, even in November. That's a big number. And you're going to be under pressure if you're Rafa Benitez. Yet, there are reports today suggesting that Florentino Perez, president of Real Madrid, will back Rafa Benitez at a press conference scheduled for today. So we will keep an eye on that to see if, in fact, Rafa Benitez has a job come the end of Monday. In the Premier League, Liverpool shocking Manchester City at the Etihad 4-1, absolutely running roughshod over the citizens there for the Reds. Manchester United deals with their striker shortage, and wins 2-1 at Watford. Chelsea beats Norwich 1-0 at Stamford Bridge. Leicester on fire, 3-0 winners away to Newcastle. They jump up to first place, and Jamie Vardy, Leicester striker, has equaled Ruud van Nistelrooy's record of scoring in 10 consecutive Premier League games. Absolutely fantastic story. Jamie Vardy making his way up the ranks in English football and arriving with Leicester, who again now is in first place in the last week of November. That is pretty stunning. MLS playoffs. Actually, no, excuse me. Let's go to Germany. Dortmund losing more ground to Bayern Munich with a 3-1 loss on Friday to Hamburg. Bayern Munich, meanwhile, rolls on Saturday with a 3-1 win over Schalke. Chicharito Hernandez scoring in his 7th consecutive match as Leverkusen wins 3-1 away to Eintracht Frankfurt. Wolfsburg demolishing Werder Bremen 6-0. So there's your German update. MLS Cup playoffs. The Columbus Crew with a 2-0 win over the New York Red Bulls at Mafre Stadium in Columbus. Biggest crowd in Columbus Crew playoff history on hand to witness. Justin Meram scoring 9 seconds into the match. Just a brilliant start for Columbus. They went ahead and rode that goal out. Added one late with Kai Kamara picking up a goal, cleaning up a mess after cleaning up a rebound after Cedric just absolutely destroyed the Red Bulls' defensive defensive setup there. Just slaloming around people, making Dax McCarty look ridiculous. So that's a big win for Columbus. It sets them up very nicely going away to the second leg in New York on Sunday. There will be 27,000 people on hand at Red Bull Arena to push on the Red Bulls, who have a shot. I mean, let's be honest. They do have a shot. They did not get an away goal, but they should be okay to at least give Columbus a run for their money. Meanwhile, Portland, in their first leg against FC Dallas at home at Providence Park, gets a 3-1 win. Liam Ridgewell, Darren Asprilla, and Nat Borchers with the goals, for Portland. Meanwhile, David Teixeira scores for FC Dallas to give them an away goal at 2-1. You actually thought maybe FC Dallas was in good position to go home, and with that away goal, put away Timbers. But when Nat Borchers tacked on that third goal for Portland, it puts them in great position to go and finish the thing out in Frisco, Texas next Sunday. Both of the top seeds now behind by significant margins in the conference finals. We'll see if the upsets are coming. Sepp Blatter says he was, quote-unquote, close to death after being hospitalized for stress. He said he was, quote, between the angels who were singing and the devil who was lighting the fire. Okay, Sepp. He said, I was very close to death, but luckily I never became unconscious in the 48 hours where I was really between the angels who were singing and the devils who were lighting the fire. It was the angels who sang. All right. He then went on to back Michel Platini as his successor as FIFA president. Both of those men, of course, suspended by the FIFA Ethics Committee for their role in a questionable transaction involving payment to Platini for work done 10 years before he was actually paid from the FIFA coffers. In college soccer, we will have a new champion in 2015. Defending champion Virginia knocked off by Maryland in the round of 32 in the NCAA men's soccer tournament. Number 1 seed Wake Forest, number 2 seed Clemson, number 3 seed Georgetown all win to make it into the third round. The matches for that round will be played November 28th and November 29th. So there's your college soccer update. Yeah, Robert on Twitter mentioning Liga MX had some nice matches this weekend. Club Tijuana with a big win over Atlas, 2-0. Atlas in the dumps at the moment. Club America and Pumas in that derby match, 1-1 in Mexico City. Chiapas 3-2 over Pachuca. Leon 3-0 over Dorados. Santos Laguna with a 3-0 win at Guadalajara over Chivas. That's a big win for them. Monterrey falling to Toluca 3-1. It's interesting times in Mexico. We will look at the playoff matchups in Mexico, I'm sure, over the next couple of days. But you do have your matchup set up: Pumas versus Veracruz, Toluca versus Puebla, León versus Club America, Chiapas versus Tigres. All right, now we will take a break, and when we come back, we will talk to our friend Charlie Boehm, and he will tell us all about the MLS Cup playoffs. It is Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com. Don't go anywhere. Be right back. Oops, that's the wrong one. Let's try again. There we go.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. with Jason Davis.
All right, here we go. Back on Soccer Morning. We are joined now by Charlie Boehm, MLSsoccer.com, SoccerWire.com, USSoccerPlayers.com, excuse me. Limited time with Charlie here this morning, but we definitely wanted to touch on the MLS Cup playoffs, the first leg of the conference finals in the books, both East and West. And Charlie, first of all, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. It's still sort of marinating in some of that drama we had last night.
Yeah, it was both of those games provided some interesting storylines, and really, I mean, we'll get into the specifics of what happened in each one of those games here in a moment, Charlie. But do you think that there's an argument for the for the higher seed having to go on the road in the first leg, not necessarily being an advantage for those teams in this case, obviously New York and FC Dallas?
Well, sure. I mean, this is something that comes up, I think, pretty much every year. It's kind of an annual tradition in MLS postseason. You can make a case for there being an absence of home field advantage, but it's hard to say what's a better approach. So, of course, we know that MLS owners want to host a game. They all want to host as many playoff games as possible because that's revenue and exposure over and above what they planned on for the season. But that means you're looking at a minimum of a 2-game series. In the early years, they tried 3-game series as well, and that was pretty awkward too. So there's ways you could tweak it, but I think nothing's going to really make everyone happy at this point. 1-game series would have some benefits to it, but it also shrinks the margin for error even further for the higher seed. I've heard it suggested that we ditch the away goals rule. I've heard suggested we ditch the goal aggregate at all. The old NASL did 2-game series with just simply based on victories, so it didn't matter what your margin of victory defeat was.
Well, that's been done in MLS history as well, 3-game series in the past, and that's. I don't know. That's even odder from a soccer perspective. Not that I'm necessarily tied to we have to do things the European way or whatever, Charlie. But it is interesting.
Well, what I would say is, don't lose 3-1. Don't lose. Don't give up a lot of goals. I mean, the fundamentals are the same here. Probably if I were king, probably the only tweak I'd make in the short term is I would actually offer the hosting sort of situation to the discretion of the higher seed. So if FC Dallas really wanted to host the first leg rather than go on the road in the first leg, let them choose that as soon as the matchup is known, and then you go from there. I honestly suspect that in this particular case, for example, with Dallas Portland, I have a feeling that Dallas would probably have picked to host the second game anyway because they love to have more time to sell tickets. So there's business concerns at work here as well.
Yeah, certainly. All right, let's look at these games. Let's start in the Eastern Conference. The Supporter Shield winning New York Red Bulls go to Columbus. Sellout crowd, although not everybody in the house to start the match, Charlie. Long security lines. Obviously, things are very tense around sporting events these days because of what happened in Paris. And so I don't necessarily blame anybody, although that maybe it should be streamlined a little bit better. But people missed the opening goal because Justin Meram scores 9 seconds in, and really, if you're Jesse Marsch, if you're the New York Red Bulls, if you're that back line, you have to be incredibly disappointed that you let a long ball and a Kai Kamara knockdown beat you 9 seconds into the game.
Yeah, it's a cardinal sin, really, and someone like Jesse Marsch, he's going to be pulling his hair out for the next week, if not longer. Giving up that goal. It's his team has generally been very good in this department in terms of preparation, mentality, intensity. I've seen them score. I mean, they almost set an MLS record a few months ago during the regular season, scoring, I think, against Philly, mere seconds off the kickoff. And it showed the sort of gulf in intensity and focus levels between those two clubs. In this case, it was, classic Route 1 play where it came down to missing out on one header and maybe missing one opportunity to clear, and then all of a sudden you're down. So these are the moments that decide series like this, and I don't know that it's necessarily the case. I actually think New York are still well in this series, but it certainly leaves them with a tougher mountain to climb. And honestly, it could have been worse if you look at how many chances Columbus created. Yeah,
they did create a bunch of chances. They also sort of out-pressed New York. We know the Red Bulls have leaned on Jesse Marsch's high press game to put them where they are. And Columbus, for their part, certainly isn't a team to sit back. We know what their identity is, and both these teams tried to play to that identity. It just ended up that Columbus did a better job of it in this particular match. I mean, I don't know that we can identify why necessarily. It's just that for whatever reason, the intensity level was higher for the home side.
Well, I think as a home team in that situation, you should have an internal clock going in your head. You should have a sense of urgency over and above even what you would expect for the playoffs, because knowing you're playing the top seed, you're playing a team that's very good at home in the Red Bulls. You've got to have that sense of desire to really cash in and make hay. And I could see the frustration was actually growing. Before that second goal, when it was 1-0, should have been more than that, arguably. You could see Kamara was chirping a little bit as his teammates. There was a little bit of frustration there. There was that sort of desire to go and get more and cash in, because if you create 10 chances and you only put one away, you've left the door open for your opposition to punish you more effectively on the return leg. Yeah. So I think they had that desire, and it served them well.
Yeah, certainly they needed they needed to add that second one to feel good about their chances going back to New York. And Cedric Mabwadi, obviously dancing through the Red Bulls defense, making Dax McCarty look slow, and then Kai Kamara cleaning up on the backside. So if with that second goal, you have to like Columbus's chances, and yet, as you said, certainly no real reason to think that New York's not capable of a comeback here.
Absolutely, New York is going to have a sellout of their own at Red Bull Arena. They've got a mentality and an approach, a tactical approach that tends to discomfort opponents, that can destroy well laid plans of bus parking or tempo controlling, and so the issue is going to be, is New York going to be able to summon that same level of drive right from the opening whistle? If they get the first goal early, let's say you score in the first half, it introduces so many doubts into Columbus minds. It gets the crowd, riled up. I think Columbus will feel like, hey, if we get one of our own, then we're in great shape. We can kill the tie off really in a lot of ways with an early goal. And do the same thing to the Red Bulls.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see if how aggressive Berhalter is to start that match with the high level. I mean, that place is the loudest in the league with that enclosed building with that full house, and to see, or one of them certainly, to see whether or not Columbus is going to sit back and try to absorb the pressure that the Rebels are undoubtedly going to apply. Will be fascinating. I have limited time with you, Charlie, so let's switch over to the Western Conference and talk about what Portland did. They get a 3-1 win, and very much like Columbus, if not for that last goal, we might be talking about a very different feeling heading into the second leg.
Yeah, amazing scenes in Portland, and you really feel terrible for Jessica Gonzalez, the young goalkeeper who was really put in a crucible kind of environment. For you could argue the first time in his career as a starter, and you could say he was at fault on two of those goals, but the third one particularly, just to sort of, again, much like the Red Bulls, but at the opposite end of the clock. If you make one slip up in that moment, you can be really viciously punished, and 2-1 and 3-1 are such different outcomes in that series. I think Dallas is in great shape. In better shape perhaps than they feel at the moment, because they do have an away goal. They too can push the tempo at their place, but just an enormous boost for Portland, and really just digging out. It's really two very, very scrappy goals, bookending a golazo from Asprilla.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't really account for that. Some question of whether or not Jesse Gonzalez misplayed that shot. I mean, I don't know what you do in that moment, and I think that lots of goalkeepers get beaten by a ball that just moves that much, Charlie.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out on the strike that it was actually literally wrapped around a defender. So he's got three of his own teammates' bodies screening him to some extent, and the shot itself, given the movement and the pace it had on it, he's seeing it sort of emerge from his teammates' kind of upper body area, and just hit in a way that was either genius or great good fortune by Asprilla.
This is
but he gets a late look at it.
Yeah, this series very much, and certainly Columbus and New York to a certain extent as well, just show how fine the margins are. Certainly in the playoffs and MLS, whether or not FC Dallas is overall a better team than Portland, it kind of doesn't matter in that moment when you get that goal from Asprilla, when you get the set pieces for Portland all of a sudden come good, and that's not something they've been great at. And then when you look at when you look at what FC Dallas has to do at home, they probably can do this too, just like New York. And if not for, I vividly recall Mauro Diaz playing an incredible ball for Hollingshead that he couldn't put on frame. So there's, these are the margins, Charlie.
Absolutely. And I think Dallas has to feel good about many aspects of their performance. It's just that leaking 3 goals in that situation is painful, and it speaks to the atmosphere that the Timbers fans created, and just the relentlessness of the Timbers. They're big guys. They're 2 center backs, Borchers and Ridgewell, coming up big at both ends. Pitching up a pretty good defensive performance, but also scrapping out important goals on set pieces. So we talk about set pieces so often, right? And they prove to be crucial on this occasion. I have a feeling that set pieces will play a role again in both of these return legs. The question is who's going to capitalize.
There you go. Charlie Boehm, MLSsoccer.com, soccerwire.com, USsoccerplayers.com, CBOEHM on Twitter. Go follow him. Charlie, appreciate the time. It was good to talk to you. I'm sure we'll check in with you again with the second legs.
Sounds great. You guys have a good show.
There you go. Have a good Thanksgiving. Charlie Boehm there. Let's move on. We've lined up our friend Christian Hennig. He'll talk to us about the Premier League coming up. That'll be good. Let's do that. Jamie Vardy probably going to feature heavily. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
We are back on Soccer Morning. Very happy to have grabbed our friend Christian Hennig, who joins us. He writes for many an outlet. You can follow him on Twitter at KHENEAGE. Christian, how are you?
Very good, mate. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. We just talked about your lack of sleep. Luckily, your lack of sleep can be attributed to the amount of football that you watch, which, who's going to complain about watching a lot of football? Certainly, we've got the Premier League to talk about here, Christian. And, I think my instinct, generally speaking, is to say, let's talk Manchester City, the big money club. Let's talk about Chelsea, the big club struggling. Let's talk about Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world. Let's talk about Liverpool and their new manager, Jurgen Klopp. And yet I think that what I should do is talk about one of the smaller clubs who happened to be in first place, Leicester, and certainly Jamie Vardy. Just they go to Newcastle. Vardy scores again. They are now in first. It may not last forever, but tell me how remarkable it is.
It's brilliant stuff. You have to add the further context of when Ranieri was appointed in the summer, everyone thought it was a bad decision. I remember Gary Lineker, a famous ex-Leicester player, saying as much. And, you know, as someone who's a bit romantic about these kind of things, it's the stories in Leicester as well. I mean, I did something on Jamie Vardy last week that you can find on the internet, talking to kind of the guys that he worked with in non-league and how he was just a very regular guy and how actually his game hasn't changed from the days when he was at Stocksbridge Park Steelers in the 8th tier of English football. Then you've got Riyad Mahrez, again, another one who's got this great story. It's so tragic in the sense that he lost his father when he was 15 and he vowed that he would become a professional to kind of continue his father's dream. And he had the chance to sign for PSG and Marseille when he was at Le Havre, but he decided against it because he knew he wouldn't play there. And there's just so many great stories in this team. And to see them gel so effortlessly and almost be the kind of self-made stars that they have become at Leicester, it's a brilliant story for the Premier League.
Certainly is. And it is, you know, they take on this image as certainly they are an underdog when we consider the financial clout of the clubs that are usually in that conversation. And again, this probably won't last, Christian, but give me a reason why it could. Give me a reason why we could look up after the festive period and maybe still see Leicester hanging around.
Because Claudio Ranieri took Chelsea to nigh on the summit of the Premier League. So he has this very convoluted perception in the sense that his time in Greece with the national team, it wasn't very good. Now, I think part of that was down to the players as much as him. You look at other parts of his career, Chelsea, Juventus, even Inter to a degree, he's done wonderful things with the football clubs that he's worked at. And I think, arguably, he's a little bit underrated. And I think he's come back to the Premier League and, excuse me, I know some people said that he'd been away so long that things would have changed and it would be different. He's picked up right where he left off in that sense. And I think if there's one man in this league that I trust to kind of maintain his team's form, it's Leicester. Now, of course, there are things that go against them. They concede a good number of goals, which now when the Vardy patch starts to wane slightly, that will be a true test for them. But look, I've seen stranger things, to be truthful. I've seen much stranger things than Leicester staying near the top of the league come January.
Certainly. All right, let's move on. And okay, so we've got Leicester at the top of the table. That's a fantastic story, and we'll continue to watch them, especially again as the festive period comes, and really the crucible is that schedule, that very congested schedule. They're a point up on Manchester United. Manchester United, without Wayne Rooney, without Martial, goes to Watford and wins. No great strokes to beat Watford. I mean, we know that certainly, but in light of the striker problem, and in light of Louis van Gaal's comments about how he gets paid a lot of money to do basically nothing, this is a very odd time at Manchester United. Here they are in second place.
They're getting the job done. They're not doing it pretty, but they're getting it done. That's all that matters. And, you know, to be honest, I felt more sorry for Troy Deeney than anyone. The poor guy goes and scores a penalty and then about a minute later scores the own goal that then puts them behind again. The problem I think Manchester United have at the minute is they're almost wrestling with their own past. And the Sir Alex Ferguson, they were known for playing quite beautiful football at times. And I think they were known for dominating as well and having, if not always a technical superiority over the team, definitely a mental one. So that even if they were having a bad day, you still felt nervous. You still felt like if you made one slip or one mistake, they'd pounce and you'd be a goal behind. It was a very difficult thing to explain, but you felt it the second you got in the stadium when your team was playing against them. They don't really have that now. There's not that fear. And I think that was kind of shown again by the way that Watford attacked them and the way that almost every team that have faced them have attacked them. There's not a fear in Manchester United at the minute. And I think part of that goes on the shoulders of Louis van Gaal because he's not cultivating that reputation. He was seen as a big name to replace David Moyes, to be more in the ilk of Sir Alex Ferguson in that sense. And I think part of his remit, whether it was written on the piece of paper that he signed or not, was to re-establish that mentality and re-establish that mental dominance, if you will. And it's something that I think he's actually neglected quite significantly, and it does cost them, I think, from time to time.
Certainly the character of Manchester United that sort of spewed out of Alex Ferguson is maybe not something. I mean, is it possible to recapture that? I mean, obviously, that's why David Moyes was not the guy there, because he never projected that same sort of imperious kind of attitude that Alex Ferguson had.
It's very difficult. I think the problem is, if you look at maybe the other great clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona, the mentality isn't necessarily tied into the man that sits in the dugout or the person that sits in the dugout. At Manchester United, it is. It's kind of Matt Busby, it's Sir Alex Ferguson. It's difficult to get away from that when you've had it so intertwined. Is it possible? Yes. But again, you almost think that by getting away from the Sir Alex Ferguson legacy, you're going to attach it to another host. And that's the problem, is that when you've had such continuity at a football club, especially, I think, in the modern era, you only look at really Auxerre, who had a similar kind of stretch, but not nearly as much success. It is very rare, and that's the problem with Manchester United. It's such a unique beast to try and tame. It's not like any other of the big clubs in world football, and I think that's something that those who try and work there seem to kind of miss when they arrive at Old Trafford.
Yep. All right. So Manchester United with a win, but as you said, maybe some ongoing issues to work out. I mean, at the moment, sitting in a good position to make a title run. Meanwhile, Manchester City, sitting right behind Manchester United, gets stomped at home by Liverpool. And is this the culmination of the work that Jurgen Klopp's done to this point, Christian? Is this a blip when it comes to City? Is this on Pellegrini? Where does this fall for you?
I think shades of everything, in the sense that you look how high Liverpool won the ball back on Saturday evening. It wasn't like that under Brendan Rodgers. That's very much a trait of Klopp. I think it's something that, in truth, every writer worth his salt was looking for as soon as he took over. How high do they win the ball back? What's the pressure like? Is it the gegenpressing that has kind of become etched in our brains? And a lot of the traits are, undeniably. And I think they're benefiting from that, because for me, I think Liverpool's attackers are attackers that need space to work in. I don't think they're the kind that string maybe little neat interchanges right the way through the field. I think they can do it in short bursts, but you need to give them the space to work in. And equally, I think they're better working in kind of bursts of energy. As we saw with the goals at the weekend, it was win the ball back, burst, win the ball back, burst, that kind of mentality. As for Man City, they've been poor at home for a while now. They've been particularly slow starters at home as well. I remember watching the Newcastle game, and they were lucky not to be down by 2, maybe even 3 in that game. And they ended up going, I think, 1-1 at half-time, only thanks to the fact that Aguero managed to nab them an equaliser. There's something wrong with the mentality of that football club. It's very difficult to put my finger on something specific, but it seems as if perhaps some of the players just aren't right for that team, in terms of they're not the best fit. Equally, I mean, he left, Fernandinho out. I'm not too sure why. It's the juggling of the multiple competitions as well. They're kind of flittering between brilliance and stupidity. And unfortunately, I think for their sake, it was the stupid ones that turned up against Liverpool.
Yeah, and Pellegrini made some very showy changes at halftime. Took out Yaya Toure. Does that indicate it's almost as though he's creating a problem. I mean, if they were poor, they were poor. Maybe that sends a message. But when you have a figure as large as Yaya Toure in that team, if they're going to succeed, Christian, you have to imagine that Yaya Toure has to be part of it.
You'd be easier off just cancelling the birthday cake he got at the event. That'll get his goat up much quicker than taking him off. I think Toure is another one of the problems, in the sense that he's starting to look his age now. And the difficulty is with Toure is that when we think of City, it's the burst forward. It's the synonymous kind of athleticism and driving the team, both in the figurative and the literal sense. The fact that he's not that player anymore, he's not able to do that as consistently, it's a lot it's kind of bursts now, almost like the Liverpool team in that sense. It's bursts of acceleration, bursts of brilliance. That's hampering the City team because they rely on that as an important dynamic. And the truth is, I'd be tempted to say it's possibly time to phase Yaya Toure out and try and find either a successor. I mean, I think they're in short supply. I would argue that's why they've been looking at Paul Pogba. I think they see him as a very similar midfielder who can drive through the central channel and take players on in that same style. But they need to work on something because you can't stand still when you're a team with their aspirations. You have to keep evolving, have to keep reinventing yourself in that sense.
All right, let's move along. Let's look at Arsenal. They fall this weekend. They've got injury concerns with Coquelin going down. They lose to West Brom. Is this the annual, the annual swoon that we're so used to seeing with Arsenal? Has it started already?
I think it started in their own heads. That's the problem with Arsenal. It's a mentality issue. It's not an ability problem. The fact that Francis Coquelin is seen as this kind of make or break player, and I watched some of the fan channels and such, and they talk about knowing they were going to get beat the second Coquelin was ruled out. We have to remember, just last year, Coquelin was being sent to Charlton Athletic on loan to get some experience. The fact that he can be moved to such a game-changing player, if you will, in such a short space of time, I think that speaks volumes of that midfield in terms of what it's able to do now. The central midfield, I would argue, needs some investment. There's talent in the forward line. I think you could argue they need a truly brilliant striker, I think, to really shift them up a gear. But central midfield needs something as well, because even when Coquelin and Cazorla are there, the dynamic isn't perfect. It still needs some kind of refinement, some kind of work. And the fact that Wenger isn't willing to spend, well, that's an unfortunate trope that we kind of go back and forth on depending on whether they're winning or losing. The truth is he has to spend money.
It's as you said, make or break for Coquelin. And just last year, they're riding Aaron Ramsey. He gets injured. Everything falls apart. Why are the margins so thin for Arsenal between title challengers and, oh my gosh, are we going to make fourth again?
I think because they have a talisman problem. If you look at one of the great Arsenal teams that we've had in our generation, it was a collection of brilliant players that all moved the ship forward together. It was the Vieira, Pires, Lundberg, Henry, Bergkamp. There wasn't one star. Now, the problem is, I think they've developed this kind of new theory whereby actually it's one that pushes them forward. The fact that Mesut Ozil costs a lot more than anyone else. The fact that Alexis Sanchez costs more than pretty much anyone else bar Mesut Ozil. It breeds this almost talismanic idea that it's that one player who drives us on. You even talk to Arsenal fans, they talk about needing that marquee signing. Some saw it as Petr Cech. Some felt they needed an outfield player to be the marquee signing. You can't truly succeed with that talisman idea. It's very rare that it happens. The one that jumps out is Diego Maradona in the World Cup of 86. That's a 2-month long tournament. It's not a 9-10 month season where you've got to go away to Stoke and go away to Watford and difficult trips like that. That's the problem with Arsenal right now. I think the quality level has slipped. That's the biggest problem. The quality level, and I think almost the self-belief level has slipped. I remember Thierry Henry was perhaps one of the most arrogant players I've ever come across in the Premier League. And let me be honest, as a neutral, as an away fan, I didn't like him that much. But that was kind of what made him brilliant, was that he knew he was good.
Yeah.
I don't see that same swagger in the current bunch, if I'm honest. I don't see the swagger of champions, if you will. And I just think it hurts them in these crunch moments to the point where when someone gets injured who has been important, like Coquelin, like Ramsey, the rest believe, right, the house is falling, the sky is falling, so to speak, and they can't continue.
Well, and again, I mean, the tactical brilliance of Wenger, certainly in, during the Invincibles and during that time period when Arsenal really was a title contender year in and year out, that was above whether or not he projected that same imperious attitude we were talking about with Sir Alex and what's going on at Manchester United. I don't feel as though Wenger projects that same sort of confidence either.
No, I don't think he does, to be truthful. I think his perception has changed. I've said this before, and I'll be honest, it tends to cause controversy. I think there is a generation of Arsenal fans that will grow up with knowing Arsene Wenger as a nearly man, as Mourinho very harshly branded him a specialist in failure. They won't know him as the man who took them to an unbeaten season in the Premier League. And that's partly because the league has evolved. The league, like any professional sports league, has evolved. And the problem is where Wenger was once this innovator and, brought the idea of regulated diets and all this kind of thing, and everyone's doing that now. So you have to go another step ahead. I don't think he knows where that step ahead is. And equally, I think he's far too loyal to the players he has. And that in turn breeds a problem in the sense that you kind of always work best when you think your job's on the line. It's a sad truth, but it's a truth. And I'm sure you and I know that quite well, being journalists of a freelance variety.
Yes, absolutely.
In that sense, I don't see that with Arsenal. I don't see them. I see too much comfort, too much complacency within that squad, and complacency never brings you titles.
All right, let's talk about. Let's go down to the bottom of the table. Robert on Twitter wants to know, Christian, just how bad is Villa right now? And I mean, is there any way back for them? They lose 4-0 to Everton this weekend at Goodison. Maybe you don't expect Villa to go to Goodison and get a result, but to lose by that margin and it just continuing this really horrific season that they're going through.
Villa is a bit like that, like a young child in that sense, in the way you say, look, I didn't expect you to win, but I expected you to put effort in. That's their problem right now, is they look devoid of effort. Yeah. They look like 11 strangers that essentially met in the car park before the game. And that is quite a damning indictment of them and the situation they find themselves in. Their signings haven't really had time to bed in because Sherwood ostracised a lot of the French players. Now you've got Gardin, who at least knows them, but excuse me, I'd imagine doesn't know the English players that well. And they're fast running out of time. And you're right to say, no one expects them to get a result at Goodison Park. It's a difficult place to go. Everton are quite a vibrant young team, exciting young team. You expect them to put up more of a battle, though. You expect them to put up more of a fight. And they just didn't. And I think, to be truthful, having watched this league for a while, it was the kind of performance you look back on in 9 months and go, yeah, they were dead cert for relegation at the time. And that's the problem with Villa. I personally think, and I'm not one for really liking to make predictions, I think Villa are going down this season.
So we look at the table here, Villa, and Robert says, are they Derby County bad? I don't think they're Derby County bad, but that's
no, that was a special kind of bad, to be fair.
That was yes, historically bad. All right, Christian Inez joining us. Christian Hennig, let's briefly here, and we already talked to Charlie Bowman about the playoffs, but I'd love to get your take on last night's action in MLS. Certainly the way that Columbus handled the Red Bulls. Maybe not, the result isn't maybe not overly surprising, although you kind of would have had New York scoring at least a goal on the road. It was the manner in which Columbus did it. I don't know if they shut down New York, but certainly they shut down Bradley Wright Phillips. They kept a clean sheet, and this is a team not known for the defensive prowess.
Exactly. Now, what impressed me the most, and I wrote this kind of in my roundup today, is Columbus attempt the most long balls in Major League Soccer. They've also got the highest completion rate of those long balls. I think it's about 60%. And if we look at Red Bulls, high pressure is kind of their MO. It's getting the ball recovered in their half, in the opposition half, and then turning it into a chance quickly. It's kind of gegenpressing, I imagine, is a good term to use for it. The fact that Columbus used that long ball totally negates Red Bull's pressing. It puts them right on the back foot, isolates the defence, and that's a defence without Demian Purnell, who, for me, is a vital cog of that team that is now missing. And I think we saw after 9 seconds, essentially. That's the problem that New York face in the second leg, is that they know Columbus are going to transition the ball very quick, and that will catch Red Bulls out, I think.
When we look at the Western Conference, so that New York goes back home with the 2-0 deficit, I think that you would still give them a pretty good chance in front of a vibrant home crowd at Rebel Arena. Meanwhile, in the Western Conference, Portland gets a 3-1 win, and I said this earlier, Christian, and I think this is certainly true. It's that last goal. It's Nat Borcher scoring the third that really makes you think that Portland's going to see this out, that they've got such a large advantage on FC Dallas now. And I know Dallas has the away goal, but they're going to have to keep Portland off the board to have any chance. And I don't know. I mean, Portland seems pretty confident at the moment.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is that I think the last 6 that Dallas have played against Portland, only once have they managed to win by 2 or more goals, which is essentially, as you say, what they need in that second leg. I just thought they were naive mistakes. The defending on the set pieces was terrible. I mean, Caleb Porter said he wanted a no-frills defender in that Borges. I don't think he expected him to come up in the crunch moments like that. But again, it's almost the trope of FC Dallas that we predicted for the playoffs, is will the kids dim under the bright light? They didn't against Seattle, but I think they did a little bit last night. They looked nervous. Jesse Gonzalez kind of went from hero to slightly nervous kid in goal, I think, for that third goal personally. And I struggle to see them reducing that deficit in the second leg.
We'll see what happens in Frisco, Texas next Sunday. But right now, the 2 lower seeds looking pretty good to advance. We'll find out what MLS Cup final brings. And I'm sure we'll talk to Christian Hennej about it. So, Christian, appreciate the time as always. Deal with that wind, and we'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, mate. Thank
there
you for having
goes
me.
Christian Hennej, very good for him. And we'll come back. We'll open up the phone lines. We'll talk to you on a Monday. Again, it's Thanksgiving week, so we're all kind of shutting down already. But we will talk some soccer. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
I'll read the book you like. I'll read that stupid poem. I'll read between the...
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
All right, it's that time of the show where we open up the phone lines and talk to you about whatever's on your mind when it comes to soccer. 646-832-3909 is the phone number. Jump on in. Let's talk MLS Cup playoffs. Let's talk Premier League. Let's talk about Leicester topping the table in England. Let's talk about Germany. Let's talk about Mexico. Liga MX playoffs are set. I read out those matchups. I don't have them in front of me now, but we can go back and look at those matchups. Certainly some high-profile games coming in the Liga MX playoffs. It's playoff time in North America, something like that. We have, we have Thanksgiving coming up. There's that continuing debate over whether or not MLS should try to own a day like the Friday after Thanksgiving, maybe bring MLS Cup to that day. Clearly, we've got a little bit more time before we get to MLS Cup, so they're not crushing the schedule. We had the international break in the middle. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect, and we don't even know. Obviously, we don't know where MLS Cup is going to be yet. But of the possibilities, there are some interesting ones. We more than likely. Where did Portland finish up? Let me see if I can look at the overall table here. 2015 MLS table, because obviously, all right, so Columbus 53 points, Portland 53 points. What's the tiebreaker here? Columbus had 15 wins, Portland had 15 wins. What's after that? Goals 4. So it looks like Columbus has the advantage there. So if Columbus advances and Portland advances, then MLS Cup goes to Columbus. And there's also some talk out of this weekend, out of those first leg games, where the two lower seeds won and staked themselves to a good advantage in the aggregate total. Where both of these teams are smaller market teams. I mean, certainly, Portland smaller market than Dallas, Columbus smaller market than New York by a factor of 10. We know this. Is it bad for MLS? Is it bad for MLS if Portland and Columbus advance to MLS Cup final? Will that be bad for television ratings? Will it be bad? I mean, two teams who play some fun soccer. Certainly Columbus plays fun soccer. Portland's got some talented players. Duncan Nagby on the big stage. Those are great things. But you take it outside to a bigger picture and trying to capture some interest beyond the hardcore MLS fan base, and you wonder if that's a good matchup for the league. Let's go to Roberto up in Connecticut. What's up, man?
I actually want to answer your question about that small market. I don't think so, because you're looking at someone who is the top goal scorer in MLS, and that's definitely going to attract a lot of viewers, don't you think?
I just don't think Kyle Kamara has a profile. Okay, Trevor.
Top goal scorer in MLS.
No,
top goal scorer in MLS is not one.
No, and he's great, and I love the guy, and he deserves to be celebrated, and hopefully people do want to watch him play. But I just think that when we deal with the unique condition that is Major League Soccer in America, it might not matter at all that he's the leading goal scorer. Trevor's got Dallas and Columbus as being the worst cup you could get ratings-wise. That's probably true. I think Portland does have a certain cachet because of their fan base, because of some other, maybe, I don't know, a couple of other things that may help give them a ratings boost. But again, no matter what, Portland can't host MLS Cup final. They cannot. So it's not as though you get the Timbers Army crowd as part of that game. You would end up having Portland on the road in Columbus or in New York, and who knows how much that actually brings to the table. What else you got, Roberto?
Yeah, but I'll just say that the series isn't over. There's still a second leg.
No, sure.
A 2-0 deficit is very easy to overcome.
Yes, absolutely. These are certainly, I would say that of the two teams, New York is in a better position. Even though FC Dallas has an away goal, I just think that they're going to have a harder time of it. New York's game lends themselves at home to pressing and scoring and giving Columbus fit. So we'll see.
Yep, definitely. I was just wondering if you have any thoughts about really the Copa Centenario being hosted in the cities that are being determined. Do you think that this is the biggest tournament the United States has hosted since '94 World Cup?
There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's beyond that. And I'm not going to make this argument, but you could say, look, the World Cup is the World Cup. There's no argument it's the biggest tournament possible. And certainly in American soccer history, 94 will always be a turning point, will always be a big moment that without that tournament, who knows where we are right now. But if you're talking about the maturation of the American soccer community and what this tournament could mean to a generation of people who grew up not knowing a time when there was no MLS, not knowing a time before the World Cup in '94, that this could be not bigger because you went from 0 to 60 with the World Cup. But certainly if you're going from 60 to 100, you're going a lot fast. You know what I'm saying? You're going a lot faster. This is going to be a big bump. This is going to be a huge thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And God knows that this is going to probably sell out. God knows that every match is going to sell out, don't you think?
Absolutely. And that's why they put every game in a big stadium, in a big NFL stadium. That's why they're doing turf. And I wrote this. Look, it's bad. It's bad that they're doing turf. It's bad that there's not playing games on turf. It's bad that they're going to put sod on top of turf in some of these places. Okay, there are other options stadiums-wise that are grass. But they chose these venues to maximize the money return. And that's look, that's a bad part of modern soccer, but it's also something we just have to deal with. And obviously you're going to say I would rather have a tournament in buildings with turf and sod over that turf than no tournament at all. So you kind of just have to swallow this.
Yeah, definitely. And just my last question, and it's about referring back to El Clasico. Do you think that had Messi started instead of Sergio Roberto on the right, that this match would have been different by any other way?
I watched probably second half of that game, so I'm not positive. That was just for me. That was an effort thing, and it's going to be interesting to see what Perez says today. And I don't know when that press conference is going off, Roberto, because they did not go out there and fight for the badge. They can go out and fight for Rafa Benitez. They can go out and fight for that crowd at the Bernabeu. So what does that mean about where they are right now? And what does that mean about how they feel? I mean, we constantly hear that Ronaldo doesn't like Benitez, that he wants Benitez out. I saw this morning, apparently Ronaldo goes to Perez and says, Benitez or me. So why are you backing this guy? I mean, are you making a stand against Ronaldo? Do you really believe Rafa Benitez is the guy? I don't understand.
I think it was a mistake entirely when they sacked Carlo Ancelotti. Hugely.
Yeah. Well,
notice this as well. These routes between El Clásicos are happening 5-year circuits, don't you think? 2005, Barcelona won 3-0 at the Bernabeu. 2010, Barcelona won 5-0 at the Camp Nou. 2015, Barcelona won 4-0 at the Bernabeu.
Yeah. I was looking this morning. Perez has won in 7 seasons in charge, has 1 league title for Real Madrid. That's not the return you're supposed to get out of Real Madrid. No. To go with the star heavy program is great, making money, but it doesn't necessarily bring you titles, and they're dealing with that.
Yeah, no, that's the consequences they have. And just one last thing, Jason. I've been hearing on Paraguayan radio that the United States and Paraguay will be playing a friendly in during the January camp, if I'm not mistaken, February, March, one of those few months.
You said Paraguay?
I've been hearing it, that it's confirmed.
Paraguay? Is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Appreciate the call. Thanks a lot, man.
Yep, no problem.
All right, goes Roberto up in Connecticut. Let's go. I'm pretty sure this is Robert in L.A., not Roberto in L.A. Hey, Robert.
Hey, good morning, Jason.
Good morning, man.
Hey, I want to talk the MLS playoffs, and you were saying earlier that if it looks like it's gonna be hosted between Columbus or New York, so that it's on the East Coast. Are you going to be going there? Are you going to take the train to New York or Columbus?
Well, I can't take a train.
Or fly over there.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a train to Columbus. I've done that drive before. I did that drive for the last 2-0 in Columbus, USA. Mexico. It's not a terrible drive. I could do it again. I'm trying to think of, obviously New York's not that far away. It's possible I could make it up to New York. The problem is that the game's on a Sunday, and that's, for my life, Sunday things are tough.
Okay, all right. Well, you just that Columbus. I was watching last night. Columbus. They were playing They played pretty good, and then I don't know, maybe just New York didn't show up that day. A lot of soccer questions were saying got a lot of negative feedback.
Yeah, I look. Columbus played their game plan perfectly. Give Greg Berhalter tons of credit for that. New York's now got to figure it out. I mean, this is why it's a 2-leg series. It's not one and done. New York's going to have the crowd behind them, at Red Bull Arena, and that's a big boost for them. It's going to be loud. It's going to be packed. 27,000, provided everybody can get in the building by the time the game starts. So I think that there's a good chance here. If New York scores that first goal, let's say they go up 1-0 in that game in the first 25 minutes, Robert. Let's see, typed it wrong. Then that's going to make for an incredible sort of intense affair to see if they can get the second, tie it up, and then whether or not Columbus is going to open up at all. I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how Columbus plays this defensively.
Well, yeah, I'm excited. Also, there was a lot of New York supporters that went to Columbus, so I could see how many Columbus make the trip to New York, and so it's going to be fun. Looking forward to that one. And also, one more thing. I don't know if you noticed this, since all regular soccer games were taking place all over the world. They were doing those moments of tribute for those horrible terrorist attack in France, and Liga MX did, and I was watching a Brazil league did, but I didn't see it in MLS. I mean, credit to the supporters because they were holding French flags at both Portland and Columbus, and I know it's a little thing because I want to make a big deal out of it. I just one thing that I noticed.
Yeah, I don't know if they did moments of silence or not. I guess I mean, you know, they weren't on the broadcasts, that's for sure. I'll check into that. You know, I'm sure there was some mention of it in the stadiums. I don't know. I mean, you're right, Robert. There should be some sort of you know, they should be showing some sort of respect for those who lost their lives and the way things are going. It's just I don't know. I don't know where the line is on that stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, I saw the supporters were doing, so I'm give credit to them, and that's all I wanted to say. I mean, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. It's just something that I noticed. I don't know if it was me or everyone, but thanks for taking my call, Jason.
I appreciate it. Trevor says he thinks they did a moment of silence in Portland. We'll check. I mean, we'll check on that. It's a tough thing to try to figure out. You know, how do we show our solidarity? You got people across the world doing that. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Let's the phone lines are quieting down. We're past 10 o'clock. I think it's time to go ahead and wrap up this Monday edition of Soccer Morning. Thank you very much for partaking today. Again, hopefully, sure you got some holiday weekend or holiday week stuff lined up. We will be here just to lay out the schedule today and tomorrow. There is no web show on Wednesday. That's a matter of travel and some other things family-wise. I hope you'll forgive us for that. We'll be back on Friday. So we'll have a web show on Friday. If you're a satellite listener, if you're a Sirius XM subscriber, shows today, tomorrow, Wednesday, satellite show on Wednesday, even though there's no web show, and Friday. So there you go. There's your schedule for your holiday week. Thank you very much to Mr. Charles Bohm, Mr. Christian Hennig. Go follow them on Twitter. They're fantastic people, and they love soccer just like you do. Soccer Morning, worldsoccertalk.com. See you tomorrow.